Like I mentioned, the first space here is the government use cases for generative AI. Our panel, which has introduced themselves, has a lot of experience across a lot of different industry, a lot of different government services. So the art of the possible and the art of what's actually been implemented and value that's been seen. Want them to have each of them share with us some of their the wins that they've seen within the industry. So we'll start here with Aaron and talk a little bit about how generative AI is being used or could be used by government, especially, and landing those use cases in our area, the top innovative use cases in government sector. Over to you.
Yeah, so I'd say that whenever I talk about Gen AI, I look at Gen AI as not a new transformation. We are all on a journey here. There's two sort of ways to look at it. So as part of the strategy, what then are you looking at to sort of basically operationalize and drive some efficiency in the things that you are doing today? And then how do you look forward and go, oh, within a particular business process, what do we actually begin to reimagine? So we're doing a lot that we see sort of in public sector around customer care, specifically sort of within the 311 systems and the things like that we do. You can think about that. Some of that's chatbot. Some of it is unlocking just all this resident knowledge that has been sort of spread through all these different documents, and be able to bring that for the agent to be able to have a better answer and support and provide those citizen services. On the reimagine side, this is not in the US, but outside the US, it's a public utility. Very similar, actually, from the example we heard before. But we've got a team, they have a team of 8 people that today think energy distribution, power lines. They send drones out, and those drones are capturing footage. And those footage then are for field inspectors, and they have a team of between 8 and 10 people that go through all of that video looking for, ooh, there's a tree over this line, or there's corrosion on this, and then they dispatch somebody to do that. So we are actually in a almost production pilot with them right now, where all that footage has been fed through an Azure OpenAI model to be able to classify, and similar to like what a doctor would do with a radiologist, look at and guide them to say, hey, these are the areas that you should look at for potential concern.
That's great. Romelia?
So one of the things I do in my day job is I get to work with a lot of the public market clients that IBM has, and we prototype things. So instead of just, thinking about the art of the possible and imagining use cases, we go about implementing those use cases. Over the past 2 years, certainly I've used a lot of, non-IBM foundational models, but some of the leading edge foundational models that IBM has are in the areas of geospatial technology. We've been doing that with NASA. And so, who better than NASA to give us, correct geospatial information and get our models kind of, on target. And we apply those to a lot of different things, right? We apply those to certainly traffic management, pedestrian safety, like you heard in the previous panel. But some of the newer unique use cases that we apply them to are in agriculture. We've been working with Texas A&M, who's a strong partner of IBM in the Texas area. And part of what we do is we measure the humidity and the dryness of all of the land to be able to more effectively know when do we need to be applying, water supplies in the overall environment and better grow the crops that exist in a particular area, because that's very relevant and prevalent there to the state of Texas. Another area that I've been focused in over the past probably 1.5 to 2 years with different clients in California, New York, and other states has been in the area of electric vehicles and how we can maintain power usage of electric vehicles. A lot of the states have mandates to get onto, electric powered fleets of vehicles. And so it's important to understand what the challenges of the fleet managers. So we take a very human-centric approach to what we do at IBM. And we analyze what these people are doing on a day-to-day basis. And it's managing the fleet, managing the power of the vehicles, but more importantly, enabling what is going to be the schedule of the workers the following day and the day after, so that we enable the fleet to be as effective as possible. So those kinds of use cases are very intriguing to me. I'd say the other area, I'll mention is our code assistance, where we have the ability to manage an overall infrastructure environment with some of our code assistance for Ansible, which is one of certainly Red Hat's key offerings. So we can do all of that very effectively, and certainly our mainframe modernization efforts to modernize, COBOL infrastructure code and be able to translate code from COBOL to, other languages such as maybe Java or Python or other things. So all these are pretty leading edge types of use cases, but we do normal use cases as well. So chatbots, all those kinds of things. Just wanted to throw a couple of things out there to kind of get your minds going.
Thank you. Michael?
You ever play blackjack and you're at the end of the table? And building off of all those absolutely wonderful use cases, right? I'll pivot over to the back office efficiencies. Working inside of government at Snohomish County, I can think of the Randy or the John or the Jackie that has been in HR for 50 years and has been wonderful at knowing what is the intricacies of doing business within Snohomish County or whatever department in the division. Being able to take that information and load it into some sort of a corpus of, a private version of that knowledge base that then the veteran could check, of course, down the line what changed in legislation that affects these rules, or inform I'm thinking of my 24-year-old, recent college grad that just doesn't know how to ask the right question within the organization, but doesn't want to feel stupid, but wants to ask. And so informing that person of all that information as well. We're in a place where we're not doing as much job shadowing, right, with the remote work and everything else, being able to inform that next wave of folks. So it's those use cases come to mind. Of course, the ones Enjo that we've worked in, other cities, public utilities. There's so much that we can do on the front end, and the line of service, return on mission of basically delivering that mission better. But I'm thinking just, you guys covered that quite well. I'm also thinking of just like that back office work, right, alongside all of that.
Thank you, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those HR functions, that would be good. We'll get on that. Who wants to start that one? That's who wouldn't find that useful? Ask a question, get a general direction. You confirm that. That'd be fantastic. Forrest.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when it comes to generative AI, the key is kind of enabling your users in your workforce. And then the other side is enabling your systems and making your information accessible by your constituents or whoever. The advantage the government has is most of your data is public record. So it's nice. You can throw it out there, use generative AI. What we've done is we've used it for our user guides. So we've enabled generative AI for our customers to be able to come in and access and get real quick answers into how to use our product and our things like that. That's definitely an area that can be used. And then just enabling your workforce, but doing it in a kind of a managed way. So, writing a new policy, writing a new charter. We started our AI governance committee and we used ChatGPT to write our initial AI governance charter. I figured that was the one thing that it should definitely have a lock on. So, cool things like that. You could just use it to, completely enable the workforce and enable your systems.
It's fantastic. And as Michael said, as we go down the line, it gets harder to, something unique. So I'm going to mix it up which order we go down here. But you all have your turn on at the end. So keep that in mind. I know I would wanted an imaging of this room, this very packed house of, how am I going to get from the back to the front? Because the chairs, the back to back, I had to plot my right course. That would have been helpful as I was struggling to figure out who I was going to trip over to get them up here. But thank you for those. Next, we want to move to the patterns and anti-patterns. And for the sake of time, we're halfway through it. I'm going to ask one quick best practice and one quick common pitfall or mistake. And, as we go down the panel, try to keep it unique. So who's going last? Get ready with multiple. So again, I'm sure what we've talked about so far has planted a lot of great seeds, but a lot of us, where do we start? What are the lessons learned from the past and what we can sort of move into the future? So those best practices and lessons learned, one of those and one common pitfall or mistake. And we're going to start with Romelia.
Cool. So I'd say some of the good things that I see changing out there, the best practices are people, right? I love to think in terms of people, places, and processes. The people aspect is one of the best practices that I've seen. And I even heard evidence of that earlier today from Bill and several of the others mentioning we're trying to be very effective at changing the people within the organization, how they apply and use generative AI and the use cases that are going to go about building. And that people includes an ethics board and things like that. So those are the best practices. In terms of, things we can all do better, I see so many organizations out there that you even saw it on the last panel where do you have a data office that manages the overall environment? And yes, we do. Do they manage it effectively? We're still working on that. And, this generative AI is going to continue to kind of magnify that need for data management, whether it's guardrails, whether it's putting in place risk management policies, identification of where did this data come from, what are the facts supporting this data, what is the life cycle, and what part of is this in test and production and deployment, where am I doing all of this? And so those are some of the key things that I see going on in the industry today.
That's great. Michael.
I like how you're keeping us on our toes.
Mhm.
It would be the patterns that are working are just like you were saying. It's basically starting small, thinking big, but then iterating as you go. I was using an example of like recipe. Like if you're about to cook Thanksgiving dinner or something like that, it's not the greatest time to experiment with that, right? Right before the night before or the day of. And so that's the pattern versus the anti-pattern is trying to cook it all or bake it all that day. Start very small, pick use cases that are going to have very little impact. Like I said, maybe that's the internal facing one where you could serve that to your kids and they won't be too mad at you first before you go showing that off to your constituents and residents, right? So if you're able to select that, you're building that muscle and creating that capability within your organization as you're doing the data, preparing the data as you fuel, because inevitably you'll find that you're going to need more and more data. And how do you keep that thing, that bucket going and filled with the right kind of data? And so, yeah, I'd say iterative steps would be the best pattern. Anti-pattern is to try to do it all at once the night before.
That's good. We were talking earlier about, what if our lunch was just generated, the ingredients and the how was just AI generated the first time? Never tried it before, just big old group of people, good luck. Yeah, probably not the best first use case, but maybe a second or third to learn it. Forrest?
Yeah, kind of back to that enable but manage. It's a little bit of a trust but verify. Generative AI is cool and it could come up with a lot of cool ideas and there's access to a ton of data, but it is still AI. Some of those ideas might be crazy or wild. To go back to like the recipe idea, if you use generative AI to create a recipe the night of Thanksgiving without testing it and validating it out, it could ask you to throw in, an obscene amount of salt or sugar, and you come up with, a horrible recipe. Same thing goes with policy or with data that you're generating. It could come up with an oddball idea. Be your own expert, review that data, and make sure it's what you really want to publish or use out there. Don't trust it inherently. And then part of that, as far as a pattern, is getting that education out to your users early, guidance, kind of a policy, and educate them about the do's and the don'ts of AI and some of the best practices and the pitfalls that are out there.
Great, thank you. Aaron?
So I'd say from a best practice perspective, it is really, really, really hard. But we are trying our best so if I talk about sort of our own organization internally versus for the things that we are doing for clients, how do you run at multiple speeds? And what I mean by that is like we are at the end of this month, we'll be at 3,000 active users on M365 Copilot. We've got 2,500 people using GitHub Copilot. We are doing Sales Copilot as well. So there's a Copilot motion here that kind of is a nice, easier kind of on-ramp that we see versus the custom side. The thing that is then the anti-pattern in there is this is not just about technology adoption, right? So this is about technology activation. How do you think about what the adoption is actually going to be? And this is for all of us in this room. Just think about your last 12 months of your personal use of doing something with a Gen AI tool in some way, shape, or form. You are smarter and better at using that than you were 12 months ago. But what does that mean for your work and how all of that's going to change for all of us? It's not just giving the tool. It's like, how does it actually change the things that we are doing? I think that's going to be the hardest part of all of this.
So we are in the last few minutes, so we're going to go into a lightning conclusion round, all right? So 1 minute or less, about 45 seconds each. What key point or takeaway do you want to leave with the audience today? And we were going to start with Michael.
Key points. There's only 50 of them.
One, which key point? Let me reiterate.
Well, so actually building off Forrest real quick, turns out I also work for a security company. And so, making sure that you have tools inside there that are detecting for those types of patterns, right? And I know Forrest has quite a bit as well, but essentially, yes, they're going to continue using the bad guy. There's no regulation that'll stop that. So, just keeping up with them is going to be a thing. And we, not pitching anything, but I heard that there's some things up here that can do that type of thing to help battle that. Key point is also, it's like I said earlier, the start small piece. Like, I'd hate for us to be paralyzed in order to deliver on Bill's mission that he stated earlier. Like I just helped my uncle through not DSHS here. It's got to be a different state, where it was not super easy, right, to navigate all the rules and everything else. And I was tempted to call my friends over at DSHS, but I said, nope, I'm going to do this because I want to be more informed about how to do this. And I know that the mission's there. So the key point is, or the capability is there. The key point is there's going to be new patterns. There's going to be new technologies. We're going to have to keep up with it, but just start. And
Thank you. Yeah. All right, we're going to jump over to Aaron next.
I'd say just kind of keep in mind 4 things, right? So one is
One.
I know, but it is one thing, but it's 4 sub.
1A, 1B. All right. Make it quick. 1 minute.
Data foundation
Yes.
and data governance, super, super important. We didn't get to talk a whole lot on this panel about it, but the notion of the things you got to do around AI governance and responsible AI. And then I'll shorten it here. The third thing is then just on really thinking through the value and finding your why. That is just super important. It's not just about, yes, here's the tech and we're putting it in and this is what it means, but really, really why you're doing it and how you do that responsibly.
It's fantastic. Find your why. That's great. Romelia.
So I started out the session saying disruptive innovation was my key words. I'd end with disruptive innovation is where we all need to be thinking about the future, right? We need to think about how are we going to disrupt legislation? How are we going to disrupt the use of generative AI? I know my son is disrupting it in college by generating reports for his university, which I tell him is a no-no. But we all need to be cognizant of how we're going to change things in new applications, new systems, new automation of infrastructure, all these new code that we're going to generate. And certainly all of us need to continue to invent and daydream about where we're going to take AI to solve those human-centered problems.
Thank you. All right, Forrest.
Yeah, I'll go back to my opening point too, is kind of enable but manage. Look at the solutions that are out there to help you identify what people are doing with AI. Which users, which employees are going to AI sites and why. That'll help you kind of create the foundation of what you want to put in place. And then put the controls in place to manage that AI. Most people want to do the right thing, but they need to be informed and educated on what that might be. If they go to ChatGPT, that's a public site, and they want to start uploading sensitive information, if they had a real inline training that said, hey, know that you're doing this, be careful what you do there, or go to the company managed Copilot instance so you could do a little bit more. Having that coaching, having that guidance right in front of the users in real time could really be valuable for you.
Thank you. And so here's my action item for each of you, as you should take it or not. But, finding that why, we heard from our state CIO around a connected government theme and the need for providing resident and constituent services in a better way that's more accessible, more understood, more connected. Michael talked about helping somebody in another state consume services. I think we all have those journeys. So put your thinking hats on. How can we improve that? What are your ideas and your thoughts in that space? And you can free to send them myself or any of our WATEC team to, hey, how can we move forward as a state and do that connection? How can we enhance this idea and this soon coming resident portal for bringing those services to our constituents? And so with that, thank you for a fantastic panelist here and being a great audience as well.